bug bug. Hi, bug bug. Bless you.
Okay, so on my Instagram a few months ago, I put up a video. Inside that video, I shared a lot of the experiences that I had with other people being racist towards me in my lifetime. I titled it My Experience with Racism, and there certainly have been a lot of them in terms of other people being racist towards me. However, on second thought, I realized that title is not entirely accurate because that's not my entire experience with racism. Now, there's a whole other level to it that I didn't share, and probably because it's a lot more vulnerable to share. It's a lot more deep and personal, and it hurts a lot more than racism from other people, and that's actually to do with the racism that I expressed towards my own self growing up. So that's what I want to discuss in this video today, because it is the result of a broken system in which white supremacy still operates, and so I want to share what that was. This is a bit deeper, and I hope that you can stay tuned because I think that we could all have something to learn from or reflect upon from my story. So do stay tuned, and if you watch it all the way through, let me know what you think in the comments when you're done. To start, I'm just gonna share a little bit of my life story. So I'm half black and half white. From when I was born until I was about 7 years old, we lived in West Philadelphia, and it was a very diverse community. So I saw a lot of people who looked like me, who looked not white, essentially. That was a great time in my life. From what my parents tell me, I was very uninhibited and just expressive and loud and not shy and kind of more like the way that I am now. But then when I was around 7 years old, we moved to the suburbs of Philadelphia. So when we first moved to Lower Merion, my parents were moving our family there so that my brother and I could get a better education, because the public school out there is better than the public school in inner city Philadelphia. That's also a byproduct of systemic racism. That's another story for another day. Anyway, we moved there. Now, when we first moved there, everything was great. I was so excited. Instead of taking public transportation, we got to drive a car everywhere. We had a huge yard. We had a house that had multiple stories. It was amazing, and I was so excited. Now, we moved to an area called Ardmore, which is actually, in terms of the suburb, most black people who lived in Lower Merion lived in Ardmore. That was cool. So all my friends were from my neighborhood, and so it wasn't too much different from my life in Philly, except for we had cooler stuff. Bigger house, we had a bigger yard. Everything was great, and I was still my happy-go-lucky self. Until I started to go to school. Now, enter school. I am one of very few children of color at the school. It's a majority white school. Lower Merion is majority white neighborhood, township. Not to mention, it's an extremely affluent neighborhood, so people who go to this school are very well off. It's not like my family was poor. We were actually very much middle class. Some might say even upper middle class, maybe. Like, my parents did well. So when I started to go to school, I realized, my classmates don't look like me anymore. But I still was young and uninhibited and just being a little girl, you know? So I made a lot of friends. Now I start hanging out with those friends. I start going to these friends' homes that are big and nice and have swimming pools, and I'm getting rides in their parents' Mercedes, and just seeing this lifestyle where, yes, we have a home, my family, but these kids who I'm hanging out with have nice, decorated homes that have beautiful furnishings and huge kitchens and lovely stuff. And yes, we had a yard, but these people have a yard with a pool and a trampoline and this like perfect dog that's not crazy like our dog. Yes, we had a car, and it was nice to drive around in our car, but my mom's car was an old station wagon, and these cars are brand new Mercedes 4x4s. Like, it was always a comparison. Now I'm starting to look at what they had and I'm thinking, this is nice. When I'm with them at their homes, immersing myself into their lives, I like it. They have nice things. It's cool. I'm young, shiny, nice things. Sign me up. I want it. But what happened then is that I started to look around where I lived in Ardmore and I thought, this stuff isn't nice. So I started to look at my own life in comparison to their life and I thought, this isn't nice anymore. What I was excited about before, I'm not excited about it anymore because it's not as good. Now, what does that have to do with whiteness? Well, what happened was I started to make a subconscious link to goodness and whiteness. Why? Because all of the goodness that I was seeing, i.e., the nice things, the nice homes, the nice cars, the nice lifestyles, this perfect little family lives that I saw in the lives of all of my friends at school, it was all white families. They were all white. And then what I saw in Ardmore, where I lived, where most other black people lived, was not nice. The houses all of a sudden seemed ramshackle to me. And we didn't have nice cars, and we didn't have nice yards. No one that I knew in Ardmore had a swimming pool. Everyone who lived in Ardmore was black. So, black is bad. White is good. That sucks. You know, being half black. Why? Half of me is bad. That's my thought process back then. Half of me is bad. Listen, it's not right. Of course. But I was a young girl. And this is just what happened. I didn't have the wherewithal or the emotional competence or maturity to understand things the way that I do now because I was a child. What did I do as a result of this? Well, I want to fit in. So I started to reject my blackness. I rejected my blackness. Half of my identity I began to reject. And that really manifested in some ugly ways. All of a sudden, I don't want to go to my family gatherings. When it comes holiday time, I see all of my peers, holiday experiences. It looks so different from mine. I don't want to go to that anymore. I definitely don't want to photograph it. I would be dead silent. I don't want my home anymore. I don't want this life in Ardmore. I don't want anyone to know where I live. I don't even want to take the bus to school because I don't want to get off the bus with all the kids who live in Ardmore because I don't want to be seen doing that. Now, that was a conscious thought process. That's conscious. But I didn't understand the implication of it. It's hard for me to talk about this. It's not by any means easy to discuss. So I actually had to really mentally prepare myself to sit here and talk about this, just knowing that I'm going to share this with an unlimited amount of people. Okay, here's a really heartbreaking story. Once I was driving through Philadelphia with my friends, my white friends. We're at a stoplight and it's a busy intersection and I saw on the side of the road my uncle. Now my uncle was working a construction job at the time. He's a black man. He was in his kind of dirty construction gear and he was among a bunch of other black people who were standing on the side of the street and we're stopped there at the stoplight. My uncle is standing right there. My uncle is standing right there and I see him blatantly and I'm in the car with my white friends and what I don't do is roll down the window and say hello to my family member. Why? I don't want my friends to see that that's part of my life. I don't want my friends to see that that's my uncle. My uncle! In so many ways, I rejected my blackness. I didn't want it. And what does that create? What does that make? That makes me hate myself. And so I would go out into school and I would fake and I would pretend to be 100% white when really I'm only 50% white. And really in America, I'm I'm 100% black because I'm not 100% white. Now, that's all kind of racial politics that I don't want to go down and get into because that's a whole nother video in terms of talking about my mixed race identity. But I'm just talking about my blackness today. I hated it. Hated it. So I would go out to school and I would try to fit in and I would reject 50% of myself all day long until I got home. And when I got home, I would shut off completely because I didn't want to be there and I didn't want the truth and reality of my life to be the case. So I would just shut down and I would be dead silent and quiet. And also when I was at school or with friends, all white friends, asterisks, I was also not being my full self because how could I be my full self when I was rejecting 50% of my identity 100% of the time? Oof. I hate saying this stuff out loud. I hate the fact that this was true for me. I hate the fact that this was how I lived my life. I lived my life up until just a few years ago hating myself. Hating a huge part of what makes me who I am and where I come from and my culture and my identity. Hating it. And I am so ashamed of those things that I did. I'm so ashamed. So ashamed. But I can't go back and change it. I can't regret it because what's that going to do for me? What is that going to do in terms of helping me grow and helping me love myself now and helping me build myself into a person who does embrace their blackness, who does embrace their identity fully? No, I have to come to terms with it. And how can I come to terms with it? At the same time that I was a young black girl growing up, I was also just a girl growing up. I was also just a human being growing up. And so rejecting my blackness was really just a method that I was subconsciously using to try and get my human desires and wants and needs met. Like what? Love, acceptance, comfort, happiness. That's what I was doing. So do we see the gaping flaw here? I felt as a young black girl that in order to get those things, love, acceptance, comfort, happiness, I felt I had to be white. That's not my fault. That's not my fault. What is my fault is if I don't address this now. What is my fault is if I don't share this experience so people can learn from it and people can understand the truth and what happens. Really, I'm not the only person who lived like this. I'm not the only person who grew up thinking these toxic thoughts of self-hatred. It is my fault now if I don't try and change things. It's my fault now if I don't try and use my voice and my experience to change things for future generations so that other young black girls and boys and any other children of color of any race that's not white can have a chance to not experience this, to not have to go through this and only learn to fully love themselves at the age of 25, 26. That quarter of my life, hopefully, that I spent hating myself. It sucks. It sucks. On a lighter note, I'm happy now, and embracing my blackness is something that has fulfilled me and made my life so beautiful and rich and wonderful. And loving yourself, it's not what the system that we're raised in wants us to do, and it feels so good. And I am so sorry. I'm sorry to myself. I'm sorry to blackness. I'm sorry to black people and black culture for rejecting something that is so beautiful and should only and ever be celebrated and loved and revered. I'm sorry for that, but it is not my fault. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was crazy to film. Really, that was just an emotional roller coaster for me. Obviously, it's something that I've thought about a lot before, but putting words to it really and expressing it out loud is something else. And I appreciate you letting me use this space to discuss it, and I appreciate you for listening. And I just hope that you could gain something from this as well. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it, and do let me know in the comments what you think. And I will see you guys again next time for maybe something a little bit more lighthearted, but still, you know, gotta keep it deep, gotta always have it come from the heart. So that's what you can always expect from me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and much love. Mwah. Bye-bye.